I've spent a long time trying to put into words what recently happened to me. The circumstances were so strange that even I wouldn't believe the story if a friend told it to me. Nonetheless, I want to share it. About 3 months ago, a middle-aged woman moved into the house next door. She was rarely seen. Before the event, I had only met her once, on her moving day, when I welcomed her to the neighborhood with a small gift. She had long brown hair, wore a brownish turtleneck and jeans, and had classic grandmother glasses, giving her a very motherly vibe. She reacted so coldly to my gift that I decided not to try and befriend her. She took it silently, mumbled, "Thank you," and shut the door in my face. That was the end of my attempt at politeness with her. Or so I thought. But about 3 weeks ago, she knocked on my door. She had a slightly crooked smile and asked for a favor. She explained that she would be flying out soon and needed someone to look after her dog. Until that moment, I didn't even know she had a dog. She even offered to pay me if I would take care of her dog for a few days. I told her she could simply bring the dog over to my place and I'd take care of him. The money she offered was very tempting. However, she insisted that I stay in her house for those few days. I supposed to watch her dog all day, only going home to sleep and coming back in the morning. I was hesitant at first, as the whole thing seemed very odd, but I accepted her terms when she increased the payment. She arranged for us to meet the following morning at her house, where she would explain everything to me. The next morning, I arrived at her house, as agreed, and knocked on the door. She opened it immediately, again with that strange smile. I hesitated before entering, but kept the money in mind. Inside, she gave me a tour. I have to be honest, never have I felt so uncomfortable in a place. The house was completely dark. She even guided me around with a flashlight. When I asked why it was so dark, she explained that there had recently been a power outage, and she hadn't yet found anyone to fix it. But she didn't mention why all the windows were covered. The house's corridors were empty and narrow, only adorned with a few antique portraits. Passing through them felt incredibly oppressive. She led me into a room with a cage, where indeed there was a dog, a small dachshund, wagging his tail when he saw me. I knelt by the cage and let him sniff my hand. Meanwhile, she explained that my job was very simple. I was to let the dog out twice a day, so he could do his business, and give him food from under the kitchen counter once a day. She looked at her watch, said she needed to leave to catch her flight, put on her coat, grabbed her luggage, and opened the door. But before stepping outside, she turned and gave me a serious look. With a calm, yet somewhat threatening tone, she told me that if I didn't behave, I would be punished. Even in her absence, she'd know exactly what I was doing, as she had a special security system in the house. She didn't go into detail. At first, I assumed she meant surveillance cameras, but I couldn't find any. I wasn't scared by this. The way she kept her dog angered me, and I decided to help him. But I wanted to figure out how she monitored the house first. On my first day, I explored the house with my phone flashlight. None of the lights worked, and the windows were bricked up, which wasn't noticeable from the outside since curtains covered the brick. From the outside, the house looked normal. I did notice a vent in every room, so there was some fresh air. But every time I wandered through the house's hallways, a chill ran down my spine. It all felt so dark and oppressive, and I constantly felt watched, as if I wasn't alone. After exploring the ground floor, I noticed that the house had almost no furniture. The living room only had a couch and an old tube TV, no cabinets or anything else. The only rooms with furniture on the ground floor were the kitchen, the living room, and the room with the dog. The rest were empty or had a few boxes, as if she hadn't finished unpacking, even after 3 months. I went upstairs, where I found more empty rooms. I also found the woman's bedroom, which, compared to the rest of the house, was well furnished, with several cabinets, a large TV, and a double bed. Not wanting to invade her privacy, I quickly left the room and opened the door to the next one. This room felt even more oppressive and eerie than the rest of the house. It emitted a strange aura, and I had a bad feeling about being there. The room had a bed and various odds and ends. It looked like a storage room. My gaze wandered around, spotting some pictures and plush toys leaned against the wall. In one corner, I saw a vacuum cleaner and a box of cables, which I didn't touch. When I glanced into the room's corner, I felt my blood run cold. Sitting in the corner on a red chair was a large doll, looking left towards the bed from my perspective. The doll appears to represent a girl. She had brownish, long hair and wore a white-blue dress with red shoes. And you should know, dolls are my greatest fear. I saw the horror film Chucky as a child, and since then, dolls have been my primal fear. You can probably imagine the panic attacks I always got when my brother tried to drag me into a haunted house. I left the room immediately and went downstairs to where the dog was, knowing I never wanted to enter that room again. I reached my hand through the cage to pet him. He was very gentle and friendly. I didn't understand why she kept him caged if he was so harmless. After letting the dog out, I returned him to the cage. I followed her instructions initially, fearing I wouldn't get paid if I disobeyed. I went to the living room, turned on the TV, and relaxed. Engrossed in the program, I didn't initially notice the rumbling from upstairs. Only after the second bang did I realize the strange sounds coming from above. My heart raced, and I swallowed hard. Sweat formed on my forehead as I cautiously went upstairs. I expected to find the doll had somehow moved, but when I burst into the room, I sighed with relief. It was only the vacuum and one of the pictures leaning against the wall that had fallen over. The doll remained in the same place. I searched the house again, looking for the security system the woman had mentioned. But I found no cameras or anything for surveillance. I concluded she was bluffing to keep me in line, and I made plans to free the dog the next day. She would be away for 3 days, so I had time to take the dog with me. However, when I entered the house the following morning, the entire house had the same oppressive feeling I had felt when I first entered the room with the doll. This strange aura filled the whole place, and I felt uncomfortable everywhere I went. The feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. Combined with the eerie silence, I lasted only a few hours before I had to leave. But that wasn't what ultimately drove me out of the house. Right before I left, I revisited the doll's room to see if it was causing my discomfort. When I opened the door, my heart stopped. She was still sitting on the chair, but this time, she was looking directly at me as I stood in the doorway. Frozen and in shock, I stared at the doll's face. I slammed the door shut and ran out of the house, leaving the doll behind. I decided not to return on the third day. As much as I hated to leave the dog there, my own safety took priority. I never saw my neighbor again. After the third day, she left an envelope with the payment at my door. It wasn't the full amount, but I expected that. I wanted to put this experience behind me, but something has been bothering me. About a week ago, I learned that another neighbor ended up in the hospital after she also hired him to watch her dog. He exclaimed he was attacked by some sort of spider after ignoring it for the first 2 days. No one believed him, except me. Especially since the police found neither a spider nor the woman in the house. It was particularly traumatizing for him because spiders were his biggest fear. He said he had ignored it the first 2 days because it was smaller and in a terrarium, which was placed on the red chair in the storage room.